The year was 1846, when the name of Lorenzo Bellini became both a whispered legend and a curse among the narrow streets of Milan. His shop stood at the edge of the old quarter, a modest clockmaker's workshop facing the fog-covered canal, its windows always shuttered even during daylight. People passed by quickly, pretending not to notice the faint red stains that sometimes streaked the drain below his door. They called him Il Orologiaio di Sang, the bleeding clockmaker, though few could say exactly why. Some claimed they heard human-like moans from his workshop at night, others that his clocks never ticked at the same rhythm twice, as if each measured the heartbeat of a different soul. Lorenzo had once been a celebrated craftsman, apprenticed under the royal horologist of Turin before opening his own shop in Milan. His early works were masterpieces, music boxes that played impossible harmonies, pocket watches with moving constellations etched inside the lids. Nobles came from Venice and Florence to commission his creations, but his wife Isabella's death in the winter of 1843 changed everything. She had died suddenly of what doctors called a fever of the heart. Lorenzo had buried her in the churchyard behind Santa Lucia, then locked himself inside his workshop for 3 weeks. When he emerged, he was no longer the same man. His eyes seemed fixed on something far away, his hands moved mechanically, and the gentle warmth that once filled his shop was replaced by a silence that unsettled even the most stoic customer. In those months, his new clocks took on strange qualities. They no longer chimed in familiar tones, but produced low, resonant sounds that seemed to vibrate in the chest rather than the ear. The locals said they could feel the pulse of the machines through the cobblestones. One night, a neighbor named Gianni, unable to sleep from the constant mechanical groaning, peered through the half-open window and saw what no man should. Bellini stood over a human body, so Gianni swore its chest cut open, the heart connected by copper wires to a clockwork mechanism. When he told the priest, the old man warned him to say nothing more. In Milan, certain patrons had influence enough to make people disappear. By the autumn of that year, Lorenzo had ceased selling clocks altogether. His work continued, but only for unseen clients. Carriages came at night, their windows curtained, delivering wooden crates and leaving heavier ones behind. Sometimes the air would carry the scent of iron and salt, unmistakably of blood. Inside his workshop, the ticking of hundreds of clocks merged into one endless mechanical heartbeat. He told himself it was all in service of art, of creation, of finding the rhythm that could bring back what he had lost. He no longer prayed to God, he prayed to time. One fog-drowned evening, a young apprentice named Matteo arrived at the shop, answering a handwritten notice posted on the university gates. Assistant needed for mechanical restoration. Must have steady hands and strong stomach. Matteo was 17, an orphan raised by a clockmaker uncle who had died the previous year. His fascination with machinery outweighed his fear of the strange stories. When he entered the dim workshop, the smell of oil and iron was thick, almost sweet. Hundreds of clocks lined the walls, some ordinary, others grotesque, shaped like ribs and vertebrae, their gears moving like living muscle. Bellini emerged from the back room wearing a leather apron and gloves darkened by stains. "You're late," he said without looking up. His voice was precise, clipped, as if timed to the rhythm of an unseen pendulum. "Ice, ignore the fog. Time waits for no one, not even the fog. Can you solder?" "Yes, sir. I studied under. Names don't interest me. Only results follow." He led Matteo through a narrow corridor into the deeper part of the workshop. The walls there were lined not with clocks but with sketches, anatomical drawings, mechanical hearts, and gears shaped like arteries. A long table stood in the center, covered by a linen sheet. Beneath it, something moved faintly. Bellini noticed Matteo's glance. Curiosity is natural, he said softly. It is also dangerous. He pulled back the sheet. Matteo gasped. What lay on the table was not quite human. It was a body, female, delicate, with porcelain skin that gleamed faintly under the lamplight, but its chest cavity was open, filled with gears and fine brass springs. A pendulum ticked where the heart should be. The sound was steady, hypnotic. "This," Bellini said, "is my masterpiece." Matteo took a step back. "A doll, not a doll, Isabella." He said the name with such reverence that Matteo felt an uninvited chill creep along his spine. Bellini touched the figure's cheek with his gloved hand. Her body failed her, but her rhythm did not. Every heart has a cadence, a tempo. I recorded hers before she died. I can give it back. Matteo tried to find words. You mean to make her live again? Bellini smiled faintly. She already does. Watch. He turned a small silver key embedded in the mechanism, and at once the machine's chest began to rise and fall in a slow imitation of breathing. The eyes opened, glass eyes, blue and vacant, yet somehow aware. The mouth moved faintly, forming a word that could have been Lorenzo. And Matteo staggered backward, knocking over a tray of tools. The sound broke the spell. The clockwork body fell still. You see, Bellini whispered. She remembers. Matteo wanted to run, but something rooted him to the spot. A mixture of fear and awe. How? How is it possible? Blood. Bellini said simply. The soul lingers in it, not for long, but long enough if preserved correctly. The blood carries memory, emotion, rhythm. I discovered a way to distill it, to make it mechanical. The clocks you see around you, they beat with human time. He led Matteo to a large cabinet filled with glass vials. Each was labeled with a name and date. Some contained dark red liquid, others a faint amber hue. These are my failures, Bellini said. Each one was a donor who gave a fragment of their life to the experiment. But Isabella requires more than fragments. Matteo felt cold all over. You mean you kill them? Bellini's eyes flicked to him. Kill? No. I release their rhythm. It is a necessary price. Every invention demands a sacrifice. Leonardo cut open corpses to draw his anatomy. I simply go a step further. The boy stared at the rows of vials and realized why people had disappeared from the neighborhood. I don't want to be part of this. Bellini sighed, almost sadly. Neither did I, at first. But time is relentless. It devours everything we love. Wouldn't you defy it if you could? Matteo said nothing. The older man turned back to his workbench, tightening screws, adjusting gears, humming softly, a melody that might once have been a lullaby. Outside, the bells of Santa Lucia struck midnight. All the clocks in the room stopped simultaneously, their ticking replaced by a single sound, a faint pulse, steady and human. Bellini froze, his head tilting as if listening to something only he could hear. She's waking, he whispered. Isabella, she's waking. Matteo took a step toward the door. I should go. Bellini's hand shot out, gripping his arm with surprising strength. You can't, not yet. You're part of it now. The workshop lights flickered as if reacting to his words. Somewhere in the dark, a clock began to bleed, a thin line of red dripping from its gears onto the floor. Matteo stared, horrified. The smell of iron filled the air again, stronger this time, mingled with something unmistakably human. Bellini didn't seem to notice. His attention was fixed entirely on the figure on the table. The pendulum in its chest swung faster and faster until it blurred. The eyes opened once more, and this time they focused directly on Matteo. Help me, a voice whispered, not from the machine's mouth, but inside Matteo's head. It was soft, trembling, unmistakably human. He stumbled backward, his heel striking a copper wire that ran along the floor. The spark it produced flared bright, and for an instant he saw the entire workshop illuminated, the walls covered with sketches of dissected hearts, blueprints labeled Phase Roman 4, Transfusion Mechanica, and a series of numbered portraits of people he recognized from the missing posters around the city. Bellini turned slowly. You heard her, he said, his voice calm but trembling. She speaks to those who share her rhythm. Your heartbeat, Matteo, it matches hers. That's why you're here. Fate brings patterns together. Matteo wrenched free and bolted toward the door, but it was locked. Bellini followed, not running but gliding, his movements eerily measured. Don't fight it, he murmured. You'll ruin the timing. Let me go. I can't. You're the last component. He raised a small syringe filled with crimson fluid that glowed faintly in the lamplight. Matteo tried to scream, but Bellini pressed the needle against his neck with precise force. The world tilted, blurred, and the ticking of the clocks returned. Hundreds of them now, their rhythms syncing with his fading pulse. As darkness closed in, he heard Bellini's voice close to his ear. When she opens her eyes again, she'll need a new heart. Yours beats in perfect time. Outside, the fog rolled over the canal, muffling all sound. The clocks resumed their irregular ticking, each marking a rhythm that was not quite human, not quite machine, and behind the shutters of the little workshop on Via dei Navigli, the bleeding clockmaker continued his work, unseen, unholy, and unstoppable. When consciousness returned, Matteo did not know how much time had passed. The workshop smelled the say, iron, oil, and something that had begun to rot, but the rhythm of the clocks had changed. Each tick came half a beat slower, as if the world itself had begun to wind down. He tried to move, but leather straps bound his wrists and ankles to a table. A cold metal disc pressed against his chest, and beneath it he could feel something faintly moving, ticking in harmony with the rest. "You're awake," came Bellini's voice, calm, almost tender. He appeared from the shadows holding a lantern that cast a circle of golden light around them. "Excellent. Your pulse is steady. She's listening." Matteo turned his head and saw Isabella, the automaton, sitting upright in a chair near the wall. Her eyes were open, and though they were still glass, they glimmered faintly, like blue stones catching firelight. She moved her head with small, deliberate motions, watching him. "What have you done?" Matteo gasped. His throat was dry, his voice cracking. Bellini set the lantern down and began adjusting a complex web of copper tubes that ran between Matteo's table and the chair where Isabella sat. "Your rhythm is perfect," he said. "After the injection, your heartbeat aligned with hers. You are joined now, two pendulums swinging on the same chain. She cannot survive without you, and you without her." "I don't want this," Matteo said, straining against the restraints. "You can't," Bellini silenced him with a raised hand. "You speak as though choice exists, but time itself offers none. It moves forward, Matteo, it devours. All we can do is learn to devour back." He turned a valve, and Matteo felt a sudden coldness flow through his veins, as though the blood itself had been replaced by mercury. The workshop around him dimmed and brightened in pulsing waves. He could hear not just the clocks, but whispers, fragments of voices that seemed to echo from within the ticking itself, names, prayers, pleas for release. There in the gears, Bellini said quietly, noticing Matteo's expression, "Each clock holds the rhythm of one who gave their life for my work. Time remembers everything. It is not cruel. It simply keeps count." The automaton rose from her chair, her movements smoother than before. The metal seams along her arms glowed faintly with a pulse of red light. She crossed the room and stood beside Matteo's table, tilting her head. Then softly she reached out and touched his face with a hand that was cold as polished brass. "Lorenzo," she said in a voice that was both metallic and human, "it hurts." Bellini's eyes shone. "You see," she feels, "pain is the final proof of life. Soon she will remember everything." But the automaton's gaze shifted from Bellini to Matteo, and a strange clarity flickered in her artificial eyes. "Please," she whispered again, "help me." Matteo's strength was fading, but his mind fought through the haze. He remembered the sketches, the wires, the central gear housing that Bellini used as the conduit of power. It hung above the workbench, suspended by chains, a gleaming clockwork heart the size of a man's skull. If he could destroy it, perhaps he could stop the mechanism that bound them all. "Bellini," he said, forcing the words out through dry lips, "if she's alive, she deserves freedom, not to be your creation." The old man's expression hardened. "Freedom? What good is freedom to dust? I offer eternity. I offer her back to the world." He reached for another syringe filled with the glowing red liquid, but Isabella moved suddenly between them. "No more," she said, her voice sharper, echoing with something human inside the metal. Bellini froze. "Isabella, step aside. You don't understand." "I understand," she whispered, "that you took from them, from me, from him." Her mechanical hand gripped the syringe and crushed it, shards of glass cutting into the metal palm. Red liquid spattered across her gown, shining like blood. The clocks on the walls began to tremble, their ticking growing wild, uneven. Some stopped entirely, others accelerated into a frantic rattle. "Matteo," she cried, turning toward him. "The key." He saw it. Bellini, his silver winding key, lying on the bench beside the lantern. Summoning the last of his strength, Matteo twisted his wrist against the leather strap until it tore loose. Pain shot through his arm, but he grabbed the key and hurled it at the suspended heart. The impact was small, metallic, but it was enough. One of the supporting chains snapped. The device crashed onto the floor, shattering its glass casing. A sound erupted, a deafening rush like the breaking of 1,000 watches at once. Light flooded the room, red and gold, pulsing in waves that felt alive. Bellini screamed, "No, you'll stop her, you'll stop time itself." But Isabella turned to him, her voice suddenly calm. "No, Lorenzo, I'm giving it back." The glow from her chest intensified. The brass plates of her torso split open, revealing the intricate gears and pendulum beneath. They were beating faster than any human heart could. She stepped toward him, each movement scattering sparks across the floor. Bellini stumbled backward, covering his face. The air filled with a high, keening sound that rose beyond hearing. Then there was a flash like sunlight through blood, and the workshop fell silent. When Matteo opened his eyes, he was lying on the cobblestones outside, the dawn light gray and thin. The shop's windows had shattered outward, and smoke drifted from the broken roof. He staggered to his feet. The door hung ajar, the interior blackened and still. Inside, the clocks were all stopped at the same moment, 1 second past midnight. In the center of the wreckage lay Bellini, motionless, a look of rapture frozen on his face. Beside him was a figure of brass and bone, the metal melted into human shape. Isabella was gone, and yet not gone. Her form had fused with the mechanism, her features serene, her hands folded as if in prayer. Matteo stepped closer. Among the ashes something glimmered, a pocket watch, its lid engraved with a single word, tempo. He opened it. Inside, a small pendulum swung, beating slowly. The sound was faint, but it matched his own heartbeat perfectly. Terrified, he dropped it, but even as it fell, he felt its rhythm continue inside his chest. For days afterward, the city spoke of the explosion on Via dei Navigli. The fire brigade found no fuel, no ordinary cause. They sealed the ruins and forbade anyone to enter, but sometimes, late at night, passers-by swore they could still hear faint ticking from beneath the stones, as if the clocks below were counting something, seconds, years, or perhaps the beating of a heart that refused to stop. Months later, in Florence, an artisan opened a small shop under the name Matteo Bellini. His clocks were unlike any others, silent until touched, then ticking in a rhythm that seemed to echo the listener's pulse. Patrons found them beautiful but unsettling. Some swore that when the light hit the brass faces just right, they could see, for a single instant, the reflection of a woman smiling behind the glass. And sometimes, when Matteo worked alone at night, the ticking would start on its own. A gentle, familiar voice would whisper from nowhere, "You freed me, but time never ends." Then the clocks would all fall silent again, waiting, as though counting down to the moment when the bleeding clockmaker's work would begin anew.